In 1651, a philosopher named Thomas Hobbes wrote a sentence, "Life before civilization," he said, "was solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short." We believed him completely. We built entire school textbooks around that sentence. We drew cavemen in cartoons, hunched, grunting, dragging clubs, one bad afternoon away from starving to death. It became the default image in our heads, so deeply embedded that most of us never stopped to ask if it was actually true. Here's the problem. It's almost entirely wrong. Over the last 60 years, anthropologists have walked into the last remaining pockets of that brutish world: deserts in Botswana, forests in Paraguay, outback in Australia, and found something that shouldn't have been possible if Hobbes was right. They found people with more free time than us, more equality than us, more play, more art, more story than us. People who, by almost every measure that isn't life expectancy, were living lives fuller than the ones most of us are living right now. We didn't lose a hard, miserable life when we started working 9 to 5. We lost 5 specific things, 5 freedoms our species had for nearly 300,000 years, and then quietly gave away. Today, we're going to go get them back, one at a time, and by the end, you might find yourself a little jealous of people who lived tens of thousands of years before indoor plumbing. In 1966, an anthropologist named Marshall Solins stood in front of a room full of his peers and said something that made the whole field go quiet. He called hunter-gatherers the original affluent society. Not affluent because they had things, affluent because they didn't need many. When your wants are small and the land provides, Solins argued, you're wealthy the moment your stomach is full. No bank account required, no mortgage, no 30-year plan. Wealth, in his framing, isn't how much you have. It's how small the gap is between what you want and what you've already got. A few years later, Richard Lee decided to actually test that theory instead of just admiring it. He followed the Juhwanzi of the Kalahari with a stopwatch and a notebook, camp to camp, day after day, and clocked their actual working hours. The number that came back stunned people. Around 17 hours a week spent getting food, less than half of what a modern full-time job demands from you. It wasn't a fluke of one tribe in one desert, the Hadza in Tanzania, the Ashe in the forests of Paraguay, the Martu in the Australian outback. Completely different continents, completely different diets, completely different climates. And the same number kept surfacing again and again. 15 to 20 hours a week on survival, and the rest of the week left wide open, unclaimed, theirs. Now, to be honest with you, this theory has taken real hits over the decades. Some researchers argued Solins and Lee undercounted the hours spent preparing food, hauling water, watching children. That's real labor too, just labor that doesn't look like hunting when you're standing there with a stopwatch. But even the critics don't dispute the core fact. Nobody, anywhere, has ever found a hunter-gatherer society that worked anything close to a 40-hour week. Adjust the number up a little for fairness, and it's still a fraction of what you owe an employer every single week of your life. The gap between them and us isn't small. It's the difference between a life with room built into it and a life with almost none left over. Here's something almost nobody tells you. For most of human history, there were no bosses. Not informal bosses either. None. Anthropologist Christopher Boehm spent decades studying band societies across the world and found something he called a reverse dominance hierarchy. In plain English, the moment someone tried to boss the group around, act superior, or hoard resources for themselves, the entire band turned on them together. First with mockery, jokes made at the bully's expense until the whole group was laughing. If that didn't work, ostracism. If that didn't work in the most extreme cases, expulsion from the band entirely, which in a hunter-gatherer world was close to a death sentence. It wasn't chaos. It was enforced equality, and it was enforced hard by the whole group without a single police officer or law book involved. Anyone who's ever worked under a controlling manager who couldn't be questioned can appreciate what it must have felt like to live in a society that simply would not tolerate that person existing. There was no chief handing out orders, no hierarchy deciding who ate first and who waited. Meat from a hunt was shared out by strict social rule, not by whoever happened to bring the animal down. Specifically, so no single skilled hunter could ever turn his talent into power over everyone else. Status came from generosity and skill, not from control. Try to dominate the group, and the group would deflate you, fast and collectively, before it ever became a habit. We like to think we invented equality through courtrooms and constitutions, but really, we're rediscovering something our species knew instinctively for 300,000 years, and quietly forgot once hierarchies became profitable. Psychologist Peter Gray studied field notes from hunter-gatherer bands worldwide and found something striking. In every culture surveyed, children were free to play, unsupervised, from dawn until dusk. No worksheets, no desks, no adult deciding what to teach and test. Kids climbed trees, mimicked hunts with tiny spears, mimicked cooking fires, mimicked the arguments they watched adults have, and absorbed every skill they'd need for life, without a single lesson plan. Adults never grew out of it either. Gray's research suggests the same playful spirit carried into the hunt, the tool-making, even spiritual practice. Work and play weren't separate. They were the same activity wearing different clothes. We now pay thousands of dollars marketing play-based learning as a bold new idea. We didn't invent it. We spent 10,000 years unlearning something our species already knew by instinct. So what did they do with all that free time? In Blombos Cave, South Africa, archaeologists found seashells drilled clean through, 100,000 years old. Someone walked 20 kilometers to the ocean, gathered them, and bored holes one by one for a necklace nobody needed to survive. In Germany, a flute carved from a vulture's wing bone, 40,000 years old, with finger holes spaced for real musical intervals. In Chauvet Cave, France, someone painted horses and lions with such skill that when the cave was found in 1994, experts assumed it was a modern forgery. It was 30,000 years old, painted by firelight, for reasons that had nothing to do with staying alive. Every time humans got free time, the result was the same. They made something beautiful, not for food, not for status, just because that's what we reach for when nothing's forcing us otherwise. Anthropologist Polly Weisner recorded hundreds of hours of Jew/Honzi conversation and sorted it by time of day. Daytime talk was practical. Animal sightings, ripe plants, minor grievances. But after dark, over 80% of it turned into myth, memory, jokes, and stories about ancestors and impossible journeys. Wiesner argues this, not the hunt, not the tool-making, is where human culture was actually born. Around a fire, stomach full, finally with room to imagine something bigger than survival. We didn't trade a miserable, brutish life for a comfortable modern one, the way Hobbes convinced us to believe. If you like our video, do subscribe to our channel, like the video, and tap the bell icon. Till then, take care. See you in the next video. Bye.